Hey friends, welcome to another how to draw video. This time I want to share with you a really cool exercise that I started doing recently that really helps me improve my visual sort of observational skills and also just lets me do a warm-up before I start drawing. So what we're going to do is basically take a lot of polygon-like shapes like this one here and try to draw it while paying attention to the lengths and the angles between the lines. This allows you to basically draw a very simple object, but really focus on training your mind to be able to tell the angles and the lengths when you compare them to one another and the general proportions. So that's it. Let's begin. So we will begin with something simple and slowly build it up. And this is really good for just improving when you're just starting out and you want to understand how you can know how to draw very complex objects like people, for example, or animals or views, stuff like that. So let's begin with this one. And what I'm doing is very simply, I'm just drawing what I'm seeing on the left. So let me begin with this left line here. I tend to draw from left to right just to make sure I don't block, I don't go over what I did and smear it, or it's a very good habit when inking, especially using pen and ink. So I'm just throwing in a line here, okay, it's this line. And that's it, simple enough. The next thing I want to do is draw another line and pay attention to the angle. Okay, and I'm sorry about the lighting conditions and the shadows and all of that. I'm working on getting it fixed now. I got new gear and stuff, but this is something I'm still working on. Bear with me. Hopefully this is still like you can understand everything. Okay, so let's begin with this line now. Because why do I move on to this one? Just because it's very easy for me to go with that angle. It's very comfortable in the direction where my hand is. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw it, paying attention to the angle. Now, don't worry if it's not perfect, okay? You can't get it perfect by definition, you know. You will have some kind of mistake here and there, that's fine. You just want to get the basic angle of it down to be somewhat the same, and the length, notice how it's the same too. And there we can go ahead and just move on to this one. We can either go ahead and draw all of the contours of the shape, or we can draw the inside and kind of just go in whatever order we wish. It's all good. It's all fine. This exercise is just for that. And notice how it's really important that you spend more time actually looking at the object you're drawing and not on your drawing, which is a common mistake I see from time to time. People they see something really quick and they're sure that they saw it correctly, and then when they draw it, it just doesn't look the same. But the fact of the matter is they didn't really look at what they drew. They sort of glanced at it and thought they got it right. And it happens all the time, even when you're more experienced. Like it happens to me a lot with more complex things like figure and gesture drawing. Like I look at something and then I'm like, oh, I think it looks like this, and then I draw it and it's not exactly the same. Yeah, but I'm kind of rambling, so let's continue. Now, we have a line here. It's very subtle. You may not be able to see it. And I'm just kind of trying to see the angle. It's a small angle, pretty sharp. And I close it off with this line, okay? Like that. And then I take this line and I connect it to this line. And now I'm trying to there are many ways I can continue. Like I can try and get this line here, which has the same angle as this and this. Or I can try and go on with this line. Let's make it more interesting and just sort of go ahead and draw this horizontal line here. Okay. And you can see it sort of sits well. And then from this point, I can connect this here, and this one here, and this one here. Nothing too crazy. Like, this is really basic stuff, but it's the kind of things that you need to work on if you want to get these stuff right when you're drawing more complete things or more advanced things. Yeah, that's it. You can, just to add some more effect, sort of shade it in the way you want to, like add a little bit of a darker tone to this side and just go ahead. It's not really relevant, but if you want to this exercise specifically, but feel free to do so. So this is one shape. It's not that complicated once you actually observe the object, like look at it. Okay, so this is one thing we got. Let's try and move on to something more like that has more edges. Maybe this folded up. Yes, maybe something like this shape, okay? Now, this is a little more complicated, but still very doable. So, first, I'm trying just to make sure it fits in, and you can see it. Yeah, okay, here's good. I would begin with drawing this shape here, this sharp thing here. Maybe let me try and zoom in a little. Okay, good. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and get this shape down here, this one up here. So we have these two sort of lines that stick out. Like that. You see how it's already not perfect, but it's close enough. You see here, this line is more at an angle. It should probably be more like this. Let me go ahead and try and correct it. And for the third shape, I'm going to show you also something really cool that you can do that sort of lets you work on a different aspect with this exercise. So we have this square here, and there's a tip here that just goes toward us. So it's just by drawing basically not a straight line here. We have this line, and then it breaks down at a slight angle. And the same thing happens here. There we have it. We have this pointy edge here at the very center. Now remember, it's not about getting it perfect. It's about learning how to work with angles and with what you see. So here I'm closing off this line. It's not very clear on the printed image. And then I'm going on and doing this one here. And connecting this one. And you see I kind of messed up because this one is way longer. So let's go ahead and make it way longer. I'm actually distracted by the shadows and lightning, so I guess it is kind of annoying. I'll need to get some things to diffuse the light here. Yeah. And then we have this one here, this whole shape. And you just continue on. You have the same shape of this mirrored here. So it's the same thing, basically. But be careful when you say it's the same thing, because then you might just ignore this and go ahead with what you see here. And if you made a mistake here, then you're gonna repeat it here. So it's better to always look at the thing you're drawing. Same here. We have this exact same shape here on this side. And then there's this line here connecting it. This exercise, it can also be good as kind of a warm-up, I guess, if you want to draw something and you just want to do some stuff before that. I know a lot of people draw suns and sort of like suns, like they just draw a dot and then take out lines from it in all directions. It sort of helps them warm up. By the way, notice how I made a mistake here. I corrected it on this side. So if you have any thing you do for something that you do for warming up, I'd be happy to hear about it. So feel free to drop a comment explaining what kind of warm-ups you do to draw. In the past, I wouldn't do those so much. I'll just begin. But for some reason, the more the time goes by, the more I understand that it's better to do some warm-up before beginning. It kind of lets your wrist set it free and sort of, yeah, it can help. to produce better results from the get-go when you begin. Now here it's a bit dark, so you may not be able to see this, but basically we have this shape here, and behind it two other here and here. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw this shape here. And there's even a slight, you can see the edge here, so I may go ahead and just draw it like this. And yes, I exaggerated it a bit, but that's fine. Remember, the goal here is to work on the ability to judge, sort of gauge lengths and angles. Yeah. So that's it for this. Now I want to show you another nice aspect that you can do with it, with just another random shape that I got here, perhaps one that's a bit simpler. Just to show you, you don't necessarily have to use a pencil for this, and even better if you use a pen from time to time. And the reason is that here you notice that I was working in a very, it's very sketchy. But you don't have to make it sketchy, you can just go ahead with one line and then you practice your confidence when drawing lines. So this is also a good exercise. So you can just take this shape here and try and recreate it with as few lines as possible. That means that you're seeing a line, and we're going to use a pen for this because it's really good for decisiveness. You can't erase, you can't do anything. So if I look at this shape, and this is really sort of like the opposite of the pencil, but still the same, you see what I mean? It's kind of, it works on the same skill of telling the angles and the lengths and all of that, but it lets you also work on your confidence. So what I do with this is the exact same thing. I will start with like the most prominent shape I can see, which is this triangle here. And I want to get it right on the first try. So if I'm not, it's going to be a bit embarrassing, but we'll go with it. So let's do that. First line, here we go. Okay, fairly nice. Another one here, sort of like this. And the last one is here. It's a bit of an old pen, so it takes a bit of work to produce a nice line. And that's it. You see, I'm not being too hard on myself. It's not 100% accurate, whatever. Okay. Next one, I find it easier to continue with this line. So let's go ahead and drop it here. And while you're drawing it, you want to have your peripheral vision on this edge and sort of understand when to stop. And there I go, and connect the two. We have this area now. Let's go ahead with this top triangle. Do this, and then connect here as well. Connect this line, and you'll notice, this is very interesting, you'll notice that the more you do that, like while you're in the exercise, the more confidence you get and your lines become sharper without you even trying. So it's really, you will notice it like instantly. I'll go ahead with this line. Now this is a very subtle angle. You can see it's very thin. So I'm gonna get it like very slightly, and then connect the two. And finally, we have this sort of two lines here that aren't really visible. I can even ignore them for the purpose of this demonstration. I'll just go ahead and draw a line like this and connect it here. I can go ahead and connect it like this or like that. And that's it, there you have it. It's a really good exercise for understanding how to break down things into shapes. Well, not necessarily break down, but visualize the shapes and understand the relationship between them. In my book, How to Sketch, I also talk about it. The most important thing is just looking at the object, just seeing it. A lot of the times people don't get an accurate result just because they don't observe the object closely enough. And that's it. I hope this helps in some way. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to drop a comment with any video requests or things that you want me to do. I'll be happy to comply. It's like, this is where I get my ideas from, so feel free to hit me up and tell me what you want to see. And until then, have an awesome day, and I'll see you soon.